This is Patrick with Dallas Hockey Hangout, coming to you after a Stars 4-3 victory over the Winnipeg Jets in overtime. Jump right into it. How should we view this team? Well, it's a team that is riding a pretty hefty 5-game winning streak and, is one win away from, going into the Olympic break riding pretty high after what was the lowest point of the season so far. Yeah, I mean, it's clear Dallas has its mojo back. I'd be curious to see how many people actually thought they lost their mojo. And I mean, when they weren't playing well, the Stars were not defending well. They weren't getting good goaltending. They weren't doing well in the power play, and they weren't killing penalties. But really, moreover, they just weren't finding their offense. And in this 5-game streak they got going here, they have found their power play. They have found their goaltending. They are, they're playing better defensively. Largely, some of those comebacks from the Blues and Golden Knights were not the most inspiring defensive performances. But yeah, it's so weird because in this little 5-game win streak, Dallas has had third period leads, and each time the team has cut into it, but not been able to actually, pull out the wins. I did think Dallas was, it was a pretty even game. Moreover, it was a really entertaining game. The American Airlines Center was pretty ramped up. I will say, isn't it a little strange to have a big game against Winnipeg and it not really mean as much as it used to? Because it felt like every time Dallas played Winnipeg last year, it was like, oh, okay, this is Dallas's opportunity to take control of the division and potentially get the 1 seed. And now with where Dallas sits in the standings, which, don't look now, but both Dallas and Minnesota are catching up to Colorado. Dallas is 6 points back of Colorado. Minnesota's 5 points. So I think a lot of people thought that it was night for the divisional crown, but these teams are hanging in there. But all that to say that it was a really close game, definitely what I expected. The Ottinger versus Hellebuck matchup was particularly tasty, especially as USA is making its decisions headed into the Olympics. I can't imagine that they're going to fully start. I just don't think that they'll make Ottinger the number 1 starter. I just think that Hellebuck has too much of a pedigree and, Vezina Trophy winner. And, I'll admit, if I had to pick one of the two, I think I would pick Hellebuck, but I just want to go on record saying that I'm such a massive supporter of Ottinger and definitely think that it's just such shades of gray between those two players. And I think, largely you could look at their careers pretty similarly. It's not like either one has, won a Stanley Cup. So now you're just looking at stats and season performance. Yeah, maybe Ottinger doesn't quite have the save percentage and goals against stats that Hellebuck has had, but the wins are always there for Jake. And as down as his numbers might be, Jake just continues to win. The guy's a winner. So we'll talk about some of these goals he had to face Monday night, but it was just kind of, you wouldn't think that. I don't think he made the 3 stars, but he made some incredible saves throughout the game. Early in the first, he hung Dallas in there as a 0-0 game. And if Winnipeg gets a lead, I could see them just playing defense and locking it down. So I feel like his performance early in the game was crucial. And then look, it's 3-3 late in the third, and he comes up with a couple big saves. I believe there was one off the pipe there too. And then in overtime, obviously the big shootout stopper from Lon Scheifele, the Star Killer, which, I really love that term, Star Killer. It definitely makes me think of the Death Star and all that, but just the idea that there are Star Killers. I'm trying to think about who is another good Star Killer. Let's just look at some of these divisional teams. Honestly, the Jets do have a fair amount of them because I look at Kyle Connor as a star killer. He always seems to play really well against Dallas. Let's see. Let's just look at not a ton come to. I have to really think about that because, yeah, I just think for some reason these divisional tilts right now, I mean, yeah, look, you got McKinnon. Man, Rantanen was a star killer. If I remember correctly, that's probably why Dallas traded for him. I mean, looking at the division, I don't see a ton of star killers in the division. Maybe you could put, oh, it's just nothing. No one stands out in Minnesota. I have to get back to you guys on that. I think that previously there were some more notable star killers, but they didn't necessarily show up every game or whatever. It could just be like a big goal or seemingly always scores against us. Honestly, this is just random, but who's coming up is let's see here. God, it's gonna kill me. Let's see here. Yeah, this is who I was thinking of. Kyle Palmieri always seems to play well against the Stars for the Islanders. Palmieri, I would put up there with being a star killer. I know I was coming up with one from the East. I'll have to do a couple West. But yeah, I mean, how should we view this team? It's a team riding a 5-game winning streak. Just comes off a big, important, divisional win, and heck, in their 5-game winning streak, they've got divisional wins over the Jets, Mammoth, Blues twice. Dallas is winning the games they need to. That's really all that matters because, maybe my last pod, I might have mentioned that it seems like maybe Dallas and Minnesota are playing for second and third. But yeah, I think that Colorado is obviously not playing nearly as well as they have previously. 3-5-2 in their last 10. So 5 regulation losses in their past 10 games. And the previous 45 games, they had 4 regulation losses. So obviously they're on part of a downtrend. But I mean, if you look at how Dallas was playing, a few weeks ago, that's honestly what I was saying, which was, hey, it's a long season. You're going to have missteps. You're going to have teams play up to you because Dallas is an upper echelon team. I do feel like they're getting a lot of teams' best shots. They're oftentimes a litmus test for teams to say, hey, if we can beat Dallas and we can play well against them, then, we're a good team. So, yeah, not surprised to see Dallas get everyone's best shots. So, yeah, we'll just move into the goals. The Robertson goal. I mean, interesting that it was him in the high slot. Dallas doesn't run that. If I'm remembering correctly, they run rope hints with that high tip a lot. Specifically the tip, though. Obviously, we know Wyatt is a mainstay in the slot, but Dallas is varying its coverages, which I thought was really interesting. You get Mikko's just looking for, as soon as Robertson's blade opens up and, Robertson tilts it ever so perfectly and slides it by Hellebuck. And I mean, it's that type of skill play that, some people that don't watch Jason Robertson on the regular might not realize that he has in him. Just that high skill play. And Dallas has a lot of guys that can make those plays. So, which is why I'm really high on this team. So, yeah, there's obviously no goals in the first, and then Robo starts it off on the power play. But then, yeah, the Jets, in a pretty short amount of fashion, really took control of the second period. Like less than 2 minutes left, Velarde gets on the board, and honestly, they did something that I thought was really important, which was you just shoot to create the rebound. I'm not quite sure Dallas does that enough, but I did notice it later in the game from Duchesne. But yeah, Velarde just picks up the low shot off the pad from Anger, which came from Perfetti, and it's just right to Velarde, who basically has an open net. And then, those two combined for the next goal, Velarde and Perfetti, but it was actually a power play goal of their own. Kind of similar to a lot of Johnston's goals on the power play this year. Is the Jets got the puck down by the red line, and it was just all fluid. As soon as Velarde got the puck, it was off his stick and onto Perfetti's stick in the slot, who, makes no mistake. He was ready to shoot that puck for sure. So, yeah, I mean, and then they scored twice within a minute and a half of each other, and all of a sudden it's 2-1 Winnipeg, and definitely had that feeling of, geez, like Winnipeg's scoring, great defensive team. I knew Dallas was going to be in for a struggle the back half of the game, but this definitely did signify that it was a pretty close game, just largely, just on both sides. So, Dallas has some power play opportunities, late. no, in the middle of the second and couldn't quite, punch those through. So it was interesting that Dallas didn't need the power play to get back in the game. So, anyways, I love this next goal. So it's a 4-on-3. You can see it developing, and the puck's ripped off the right pad of Hellebuck by Duchesne. Kind of similar deal, and then who's right there? It's Lundqvist to just clean up the mess, and it's awesome to see his development. It was very interesting to hear Glenn Gullison's post-game comments on it. It seems like Nils Lundqvist is trending in the right direction. So, he's had a tumultuous time with coaching staffs here, and, he gets time, then he doesn't, then he gets crashed. And Dallas needs Nils. They need his skating. They need his playmaking. He's undersized. So I think they have to get a little creative with the board battles, I think, when he's, being outmatched there. But I think largely he's been really good. I think when you're not noticing Nils, that's great. He's +1 on the night, and he drives that 4-on-3. He's driving the net and stops. I mean, that's his goal scorer's attitude. You drive to the net, stop at the net, and sometimes you're going to have to pay the price, take a few checks. But Dallas did the right thing. They moved the puck around and got the puck on net, and Nils is right there for the rebound. So anytime you can have defensemen activating like that and getting into the blue paint like that, man, I think you're going to see come playoff time that's really going to be where everything is at. It's, hey, let's get to the dirty areas. Let's get shots on net. And I don't think you're just going to see those pretty passes and plays available come playoff time. So pleased to see Dallas is still having that shoot the puck mindset, getting aggressive. I don't know. During their little losing skid, it did seem like they were just looking for their pretty play too much. So it seems like they've kind of corrected course. So it's 2-2. Head of the third is pretty defensive battle. And then, yeah, this might be the goal of the year, right? Mikko Rantanen is a horse. He's a moose, but he's a horse because, I mean, the Stars just ride him to victory more often than not. And, he's kind of unassuming. It's interesting to see now that you see him so often. He's kind of unassuming. He's not the fastest player. He's obviously big, but I mean, he's got to have, with the puck on his backhand, he's got to be top 5 in the league. The only one that comes to mind is Sidney Crosby, and no one's gonna sit on his backhand is lethal. He's shown that for a long time. So, but I mean, look, you get that goal from Mikko. So he's driving into the zone. He's got players all over him, and he's got Shen right in front of him, and he just pulls like an and one mixtape and crosses him over big time. I'm surprised Shen was still stayed on his skates. And then he gets in tight with Hellebuck, and then Hellebuck, it was really interesting. He like kind of overcommitted down into like a weird crouch, thinking that he was for sure going forehand there. And then, yeah, just incredible patience. One more backhand move, and he slips it in the right post. And I mean, that's got to be the goal of the year, I think, as far as pure skill and things are concerned. It did, for anyone that's interested, it made top 3 on SportsCenter top 10 plays. It made that threshold. It's just an unreal goal. What can you say? This guy's magic. It's incredible. He just puts the team on his back. It's 2-2, and he's just says, you know what? I think I'm going to take this one, and I'm just going to go win the game, essentially. Incredible goal. I'd have to see a supercut of the Stars goals later, but yeah, that might be goal of the year, I think. It's unfortunate that it wasn't the game winner. You get, Winnipeg's pulling the goalie. Stanley is taking a shot from the left slot, and it goes off Mikko's stick and rainbows over Ottinger. Like, what are you going to do? Dallas hasn't been the best about giving up goals in the third recently, not locking, games down. This was just a bad goal, unlucky goal. Dallas has gotten a little unlucky lately, and the fact that they're still winning, that's a really good sign in my opinion. So get the unlucky goal, but then it goes to OT, and yeah, just a few quick notes on that. Incredible stop by Ottinger on the star killer Shifley. I mean, how quick he whipped that right pad out there and keeps the rebound away from him was just really integral. And so, you know, they get the big stop midway through overtime, and Dallas had the puck most of overtime. They got a couple chances, but they were much more willing to re-rack and just hold the puck, which is decided. It hasn't necessarily worked out from a, hey, this team's winning overtime games this year, but I do feel like largely them having the puck most of OT has been an advantage and is leading to the chances and keeping the other team's chances at a minimum. So I think there's just some math that's going on there where Dallas is saying, hey, if we hold the puck and we get 4 chances in overtime and Winnipeg gets 1 or 2, then I think that they want to take those odds, those numbers. But yeah, like Andre makes a awesome save, and just shout out anyone that is a jersey nut like I am, was able to scoop up that Olympics jersey for Andre. Man, it's gorgeous. I got the Four Nations one and the nice Olympic one. I love the color difference on the dark blue on the Four Nations and then the lighter blue on the new. I cannot wait for the Olympics. I'm so pumped. I just cannot wait. It's going to be so good, and there's just going to be such good athletes, and it's just going to be like an all-star game you always wish for. So it's been way too long, but yeah. What can you say about Harley? He ends Winnipeg's season in Game 6 at home with a nice shot in the slot in overtime. And then, yeah, you got to figure if you're a Winnipeg fan, you're probably a little salty again, just having that reminded. So, yeah, just that play was really intriguing. Miro gets the puck after a little rush, comes out of the zone, lets everyone tag up and gets it to Duchesne, who enters the zone and kind of pulls up on the half boards. And then you could see 2 players go with him, including Shifley. And then that just left a wide open lane for Harley to just waltz down the middle of the ice and hit Hellebug with a move or two and put it in backhand. And just gorgeous move. Love that for Harley. Love to see his offensive prowess stand out. I mean, it's just so underrated, his offensive games and his offensive game. And I do think that's why he's with Canada. He can defend, but it's that skating, it's the hockey IQ, it's the passing, it's the shooting. Harley is going to be a really big asset for Canada. So I'm on the lookout for those jerseys. If you guys get a word on the Harley Canada jersey, you let me know. But yeah, I mean, massive win. Good to get an OT win and get that off the monkey off the Stars back. And then I just wanted to touch on Hellebuyck, who's complaining about his strap that had come loose on his helmet. And yeah, we've seen, I don't know about y'all, but I remember a tough playoff goal that was, I want to say it was against the Blues. I'm not entirely sure, but where Bishop's mask had sort of come off like that, and they probably should have blown the play dead, and instead they let it go on. And I blocked that out of my memory because it's a negative, but I'm pretty sure that was a series ending goal that led to that with the mask off, or at the very least it was a game winning goal. And you can see, Hellebuyck was pretty upset, but as many have said already by now, you can't be upset watching Shifley go on a breakaway and not be screaming about your mask. And then, oh, by the way, there's like another 30 seconds to a minute before Harley gets his opportunity. And then, I don't know, it's just interesting. Like, I like Hellebuyck, from a standpoint if he's got a ton of talent, and obviously we'll be rooting for USA. So it's tough to kind of root for him per se, but, generally speaking, he's not as big of an adversary as some of the other players and goalies in this league. You want to talk about star killers, and half the backups in this league are star killers. So yeah, it was just weird. I mean, after you lose like that, it just seems weird to be constantly like yelling at the refs. It just screams loser's attitude. I don't know. I was just a little surprised to see that be a thing. And yes, like I get that the mask is a little jostled, but you can still see Hellebuyck. You can still skate. So they didn't have to blow it dead, and they didn't. 3 stars. I'm going to give it to Harley for the OT goal. I give the 2nd star to Perfetti. I thought he was incredible. Perfetti or Velarde, one of those two. And then, yeah, actually, you know what? I'm going to flip-flop, especially considering Dallas won the game. We'll go Mikko, 2nd star, incredible goal. He's he's got 2 points on the night, much like Velarde and Perfetti. So we'll go Perfetti, third star. So, Dallas has another matchup with the Blues coming up again, which is just, isn't it super interesting to see Dallas play the Blues 3 times in the span of like a week and a half? Pretty interesting. So we know what they're going to, I mean, I don't know if you guys saw, but believe they blew a 5-1 lead to Nashville Monday night and lost 6-5. So St. Louis is in a bad way. I do feel bad for Montgomery a little bit, but I mean, yeah, I imagine they'll be big time sellers at the deadline. And I would also imagine that it'll be another relatively low scoring game. It was 4-3 win at St. Louis, 3-2 win at Dallas. And we know St. Louis is going to stick around, right? They're not going to be out of a game. And so I would like to see Dallas get a lead and then be able to lock down that lead. That's something we're still evaluating, of course, but Dallas has just been so dominant most of the year that when they kind of falter a little bit, that I get excited thinking like, hey, now this is something they can work on. Must be how coaches feel, and that when you win and there's still some things to work on, you're feeling as though you got your team right where you need them. They're winning and motivated, but then know that there are still aspects to clean up. From this game, I don't think there was a ton to clean up. I just thought it was a really well played game. So, um, you know, want to see the physicality increase because we know the Blues are going to bring in on Wednesday. Tough schedule. 30 puck drop, which is probably not going to be till like 8:50. Brings me back to the playoff timing of last year. So going to make for a long night. We'll see how the pod goes that night. But yeah, it's going to be a tough game against St. Louis. Be curious to see if DeSmith plays or Onger. I kind of expect DeSmith, but that's just me because, Onger's going to be traveling, and while he may not be playing in any, or, he might be playing in one like he did in the Four Nations game, but, he's going to be tired from the Olympics. So my gut tells me they'll play DeSmith. So we'll see. Stars win 4-3 over the Winnipeg Jets in overtime, big divisional win, and they play St. Louis on Wednesday. So looking to go 6 straight. We'll see if Moose can pull out another highlight reel goal to, pull out the win. So at Patrick Hayslip on Twitter, DallasHockeyHangout@gmail.com. If you guys have any questions or comments, we really appreciate the engagement. You guys have a great rest of your day, and talk to you after the Blues game on Wednesday. You guys have a good day.